The Marinade.
There's no O in Marinade. Let's try it one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
The Marinade.
Marinade.
Bone marinade.
That's
The Marinade.
The Marinade. With Jason Earle. Welcome to The Marinade with Jason Earle, episode 22 with Chuck Ragan. Such an honor, y'all. Chuck Ragan is a mensch. He is a punk legend, a folk genius, a fishing guide, an author, a purveyor of hot sauces. He's the stuff of legend, especially here in Florida. His band Hot Water Music was the soundtrack for more than one generation of disaffected teens growing up in the Sunshine State. And since then, his solo records, more folk than punk, have helped those same punk kids mature into adults. We caught up at the Sing Out Loud Festival in St. Augustine, right after he and Austin Lucas from episode 21 absolutely slayed the front porch stage at the St. Augustine Amphitheatre. Chuck seemingly left it all on stage, yet he gave us a solid half hour of insight into his creative process. This is truly a thrill for me. Ladies and gentlemen, Chuck Ragan.
We know now what lies before us underneath that we cannot move or can't be moved. Oh, bless cross current in a shade.
Wise men
Check.
say, holy fools rush in.
Bye, guys.
He's asked me to just sing Elvis tunes for 30 minutes.
Yeah, you've obviously listened to the show because that's how we start every show. We just have the guests sing Elvis tunes. That's how it always goes. Chuck, thanks for sitting down with me, man. That was an amazing set. It was so much fun.
Thanks, brother. It was a lot of fun. Kind of a struggle on my end with just the sun just baking that guitar.
It's like 100
It was-
degrees for y'all listening to this.
Between the sweat on those strings and the sun beating on it, I couldn't keep that thing. I would get it in tune, and the first time I'd hit it in each and every song, it would just, wow.
Is that getting your head at all
Gone.
when you're playing?
It's frustrating, you know,
Yeah.
because I know, but it's one of those things where once you start it, you know, like you can't stop. You just
Yeah.
got to power through it
Yeah.
and do your best to try to stay away from all the foul notes. you know?
Yeah.
You know, kind of change it up a little bit.
I was just going to say, does that adjust your playing?
Oh, 150%.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's tough, but always interesting, you know?
Right.
You gotta have moments like that.
Well, yeah,
You
I mean, it's
know,
all,
to-
yeah, the best ones are organic like that. Even if it's maybe a challenge, it's still those
I
moments.
fully agree.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
And you are a manic expressive. Like, I started to write down questions, and I ended up with just like bullet points because you play music, you're a fishing guide, right?
I am.
You've got a line of hot sauces. You're an author.
Yeah.
What-
I tend to get a lot of plates spinning, you know. I'm not claiming to be a master at any of them, you know, but you know, I can say that anything I am doing
Yeah.
today, I'm going to do it to the absolute best of my ability.
Right. Well, that definitely comes through on stage. I mean, every time you play, it's like you leave everything out there. And you
Yeah.
can see it when,
Well,
I mean, you stood out there for like 40 minutes shaking hands. That was so cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it to me. I mean, I have so much respect for the people who meet me halfway, man, you know, who make their way, spend their time, their energy, their money, you know what I mean, to go out of their way to stand in the hot sun and watch us play tunes. That means a lot.
That's
you know?
awesome.
So to me, to stand out there, you know, and bake for a little while longer just to meet some of these people who care about the music it's just part of what I love, you know, about music is how it pulls people together. And I learn a lot about not only the people and the fans and the supporters, but man, I learn a lot about myself. You know, I am very lucky to have a part in music, whether mine or Hot Water Music, where we've written songs that have, you know, not only helped us out, you know, to grow or evolve or try to become better people, but other people have found inspiration in the music or have found comfort in it. And we hear a lot of wild stories about how the music has helped them out. And so to me, to stand out there and, you know, just kind of go the extra mile, I guess, for a little bit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To me, it just would feel off to just play.
Right.
And, all right, thanks. And jump in the cab and head to the hotel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
That doesn't even make sense to me.
It probably that connection must inform, first of all, it pretty clearly informs the way you play. And I would think it would inform, that connection with the fans would inform the way you write. Does it have an impact when you're writing? Are you thinking about how it's going to be received, or is it just, I'm putting this down, I'm creating this thing?
Not so much. I mean, that kind of, every once in a while I'll think about that, just because, just like any other musician or recording artist, you know, you always want to get better. You always want to do something better than you previously did, right?
Yeah.
So, sure, you know, I'd be lying if I said that it didn't, you know, cross my mind. Like, how, I wonder if people are going to dig this. Is this going to, you know, get people fired up?
Right.
But it is not even close to the first drive that I feel in writing. You know, to me, writing, it's always been a form of therapy. Like, it has to kind of rattle my own cage. It's gotta, I need it to stand the hair up on the back of my neck. You know what I mean? Where I write something and it chokes me up. You know what I mean? Or it kind of inspires me or pushes me to, you know, overcome whatever it is that is in my way.
That's
and
amazing.
You know, so once it does that, to me it's like, okay, I'm headed in the right direction. Stay on track.
Yeah.
And sometimes it could literally be like a phrase or just a chord change.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Something that I'm just like, oh yes, I love that.
Yeah.
Like, I can't make it any better. That's the best I can do, you know?
Right.
And to me, if I love it and it feels good, it's got to feel good. And if it feels good, to me, I'm headed in the right direction. But how people perceive it, that's not up to me, and I don't have any control over that. And at the end of the day, you know, I care for the people who support the music, but I can't bother whether they're gonna like it or not. You know what I mean? That's up to the people.
Right. When does that process happen? You were talking about the feeling of needing that feeling of the hair standing up on the back of your neck. When are you sitting down to write every day? Does it come in waves?
Totally comes in waves.
Really?
Like, I write really sporadically at different times. Sometimes I'm driving to work, you know what I mean? And a melody will come in or a phrase or something. I try to, jot it down in a notebook, make a voice memo, something to just get it out off my chest, out of my head. To not forget it or not to lose it, because sometimes they get lost.
Right.
Sometimes it's kind of like an earworm. You know what I mean? Like I'll find something or I guess what we say often is like recognize it. You know what I mean? Some of us believe that like all the songs are already there. You know what I mean? Like the movements, the chord changes, even the words, like the direction, it's already there. We're not necessarily writing it as much as we are discovering it.
Wow.
So.
That's really intense.
I guess so. I mean, yeah, it is.
Do you think then about why does it come to you in that moment, if it's already there?
I mean, I don't think it's any different than, wandering around in this world and finding that incredible swimming hole that, not everybody sees. The majority of the people in this world will spend their entire life and they'll never find that. They'll never recognize that. But for some reason, you decided to run down that one trail and cross over that one overgrown path, and out you come out into the open, and here's this beautiful spot that just completely electrifies your whole existence. You know what I mean? Where you're like, oh my God, this is incredible.
Yeah.
It's always existed. It's always been there. You just discovered it.
Just you're there on your journey.
That's
right. You're just ready for it on your journey, or it just is in your path.
I mean, all these songs that all of these bands are writing, it's all the same. It's all the same. We sing about love. We sing about breakup. We sing about hardship. We sing about glories, Yeah. And at the end of the day, all the stories are the same. The movements, the changes, the energies, all that is, what makes it different for everyone is just an individual, to me, like an individual recognizing it, acknowledging it through their own eyes and through their own, voice, ways, their own expressions.
Yeah. It comes to you when you're driving. Are there other kind of specific moments or things that you're doing where those moments happen?
Sometimes fishing.
Really?
I don't, nowadays I don't really get to fish a whole lot. I take people fishing. But it's not often that, I get out completely by myself. I used to do a lot more of that. I used to have somebody else do a shuttle, drop my drift boat in, and run down the river by myself and get out, camp, write, fish, write, camp, and just kind of just submerge myself into that kind of world, clear my head, and I don't do that as much, but and it's fine. I mean, it's a lot of it is I just work a lot now when I'm home. I'm working. I'm in a boat more than I'm on a stage nowadays.
Wow.
And then when I'm not doing either of those things, I'm at home taking care of a toddler.
That's fun.
So that has a lot to do with it, for sure. And it's wonderful. Yeah.
Are you doing more fishing because you're enjoying it that much, or is it because, hey, I got a toddler and being on the road is a little more challenging?
I mean, a little bit of both. Thank you, brother. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, it's all good, man. It's all good. This is a free-flowing conversation.
My brother, big
Nice.
country.
Nice.
Thank you, man. Pink lemonade. It's delicious.
Rock and roll.
Where were we?
We were talking. You should see Chuck lost in this pink lemonade, ladies and gentlemen.
Lost in.
Well, I was asking you about the fact that you've been fishing more and
Oh
than
yeah,
on a stage.
yeah. So, I chose, for years, it wasn't. When I grew up, like all I wanted to do was play music. All I
Yeah.
wanted to do was travel, tour, just be in a band.
Yeah.
The things that you have to deal with in your adult life are not necessarily, you don't realize that stuff is at a young age. You're just, and we've always lived in the moment and lived, and in a lot of ways we still do. Not much has changed, but
Sure.
when kids and family and then all the agendas that come with that, like where your own agendas, you know what I mean? You have a family,
Right.
and it's a different agenda altogether, multiple agendas, right?
Yeah.
And once that comes into play, along with just being in this society, of paying bills, having mortgages, you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
Regular everyday responsibilities.
Yeah.
It's brutal, especially how the industry has changed. It's really brutal for a musician to make a good living without constantly being on the road.
Yeah.
And as you probably know, when you're constantly on the road, it's not necessarily conducive with family life.
Yeah.
It's really tough. I mean, we hear it from people where they're like, oh, man, it must be so hard to like tour all the time, live out of a bag, like constantly in and out of airports and on and off vans and buses and blah. And yeah, it's tough, but at the end of the day, I mean, we got it good.
Yeah.
Who it's tough on is our loved ones back home.
Yeah.
Like the moms who are basically living as a single mother, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? In a lot of ways, with their man or vice versa, a man at home taking care of the kids with the mom on the road.
Yeah.
For just weeks and months out of the year,
Yeah.
it's brutal on them and a lot harder on them than it is on us, I think.
Yeah, and missing out on that connection with your partner in life too.
It's hard and takes a serious toll.
I mean, I'm gonna spend one night away from my girlfriend, and I'm like, and it's like kind of tough,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna be fine. I'm gonna get through the night, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna miss the hell out of her.
Yeah.
Because of that companionship and because of that support,
Yeah.
too. Like,
Yeah.
because when we're dealing with our own shit, having somebody there is
Yeah.
priceless.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you're away from home, a lot of stuff comes up too. You talked about how fans,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
you're hearing stories and you're learning about yourself. And as you're learning
Yeah.
about yourself, it's always good to have somebody there who you can trust to kind of bounce ideas off of and ask for that
or
support.
Vent too.
Yeah, or vent too, yeah.
Yeah, kick and scream too.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. The Flame in the Flood was a soundtrack around a video game. Am I right to say that?
That's right, yeah.
What was that process like?
So that all started where, Scott Sinclair, who was the artist who did the majority, all the art for The Flame in the Flood, at least the paintings and the images. Scott, Hot Water Music worked with for years. He's a dear old friend, even before Hot Water ever started. Scott Sinclair was the guy who every Hot Water record cover, that art that's on there, that's Scott Sinclair.
Awesome.
And he's always been a good friend. And he hit me up, probably a good year and a half before that game came out and said, hey, man, I'm working on this project and I kind of thought of you. It might be something up your alley. It's a video game. And at first I was really apprehensive, my idea a lot of the times, and this may offend some gamers, but I work with a lot of kids who really need to be in the outdoors.
Yeah.
More than they need to play video games.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit apprehensive about it, but then the more he started to explaining what the game was about and what they were doing, and how it was basically the story of this girl drifting down the river, in this kind of post-apocalyptic world, surviving, using real life survival skills and learning. And all of a sudden, it was a really strange realization where I'm like, man, what's really odd is there's going to be kids who are going to learn more about the outdoors just from playing this video game than they normally would in their life living in the middle of the city, where they're never or rarely going to see the things that I see every single morning when I'm home, or that some of us take for granted, you know what I mean? And just kind of living a life of always kind of being in the outdoors, or
that's really cool.
Nature. It was strange. So I've always been a fan of Sinclair, and I met the Molasses Flood guys, and we communicated a lot. They were sending me images, storyboards, word clouds, you name it, just to get a feel of the film, and it all just made total sense. I'm like, man, I'm on the river all the time. I row a drift boat down the river, and this makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the Flame and the Flood songs, just like we were talking about before, because this all happened before Grady, my boy, was born, and a lot of those songs I wrote just kind of doing these solo missions to the river, and camping on the river and working on songs and just kind of putting myself there, and it was
I'm laughing because it's the most romantic ideal in my head, that you're floating down the river fishing and camping.
It was a neat process. It was pretty
That's
fun.
awesome, man. So when sitting down to write songs like that, I mean, that's a very specific thing that you're writing. That seems like that would be very different from just a phrase came to me and I'm going to sit down and write the song. I mean...
Totally, yeah. And if anything, it was kind of the first time I'd ever done any kind of, for lack of a better term, like a concept record. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was there was an agenda there. There was like a end goal.
Right.
Like, where here's the story was already there.
Right.
So basically what I had to do was kind of somehow tie in my own stories, to this kind of overall end goal.
Yeah. That's really cool, man. So talking about spinning plates, so there's that plate, there's the music plate, there's the fishing plate, and then the hot sauce plate. What's this? How'd you get into that? What's the story behind that?
Man, my brother and I grew up in a Cajun family. Cooking was always a big part of our lives. And we cooked with my mama and my mama, often that was just always is part of our life, but one thing we used to do is we used to always make salsas, even when we were little kids.
Yeah.
And we would make stuff that would burn us up.
Yeah.
And we'd always just try. So it was something where we always wanted to. We talked about it, but it was always just kind of like end of the night,
Right.
Yeah, one of these days. and then it wasn't until years later, I was on tour and I started thinking about it, and I'm like, man, the majority of the people that I know that I've worked with for the past over 20 years. Run restaurants, venues, bars, catering businesses. I'm like, even though it's a saturated market, the hot sauce market,
Yeah.
like we have a little bit of an edge, to do it because and this was hoping or considering that it would actually be good.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, right,
We're
right.
like, if it's good, we might have a lot of friends who may want to pick it up.
Yeah.
But, the original goal was just to make 1,000 bottles
Uh-huh.
and bring them on tour and put them on the merch table and just
Sure.
sell them for the fun of it.
Right.
And I went to my buddy John Gaunt, fiddle player John
Uh-huh,
Gaunt.
yeah.
I'm like, yeah, man, let's do this, and he was into it. And then later on, we found our friend Chad Dolezal in Austin, Texas,
Uh-huh.
who originally wasn't even going to be a part of the company. He was just batching out stuff, like helping us get the sauce that we want. He's a chef. He had a certified kitchen. He's like, I'll batch stuff out for you. Send me the recipe. We'll talk about, you tell me the color, the consistency, the heat level, like where you want it to get, and we'll get as close to it as possible.
Yeah.
When you're happy with it, we'll send it off. Well, starting to work with Chad, I noticed that, man, he had a serious passion for it. And the more him and I worked on it, and, my brother and John Gaunt are involved as well. But Chad just became like not only an MVP, but he became a partner.
That's awesome.
And so we launched it last year, and I think the first batch was about 3,700 bottles, and we sold out in 2.5 months.
Wow.
And kind of so fast that we weren't ready for that.
Yeah.
Of course, because I got a ton of stuff going. He has other businesses. Everybody's busy, and we're like, oh,
Yeah.
And so we still were having orders coming in, and we didn't have the sauce to send.
Oh no.
But we went through the mill and back with different co-packers that were just a nightmare, absolute nightmare to work with. Lawsuits, like, rotten stuff.
Is that like part of the industry or something?
Apparently so.
Huh.
Apparently it's normal.
That's
We
a
had
bummer.
no idea
Yeah.
how difficult and what a pain it is to try to make a hot sauce and go big with it.
Yeah. Does that scratch a creative itch that the hot sauce company?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, I love to cook. For years, I always, there was a long time where I was working on a recipe book because I thought that's what I wanted to do, and I was kind of getting close to putting that out, and then, that kind of went away. And I mean, I just love to cook, and I look at it, man. I look at it the same way as tying flies or making records, right?
Mm.
I can make a record, send it to somebody, they can put it out there, duplicate it, people can buy it, people can find it. Same with the flies,
Yeah.
tie flies and put them out there to a company, and if they can produce them and get them to people that need them or want them, it's the same with the sauce, you know what I mean? If we can make something that people are going to enjoy and
Yeah.
that we enjoy,
Yeah.
that's less hot sauce that we have to buy when we're at the grocery store.
The one last plate I want to ask you about is the book, The Road Most Traveled, which on Amazon sells for like $538. I don't know if you knew this.
Oh, don't. Yeah, that's crazy. That's nuts.
How did that book come about?
It came about, I was doing an interview, a lot like this, where with a gentleman that I feel bad, I can't remember his name, but it was for a magazine in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I remember that.
Okay.
And at some point in the interview, he says, what was the coolest or the most important thing that you've learned on the road
Yeah.
in all your years of traveling? And I answered the question, right? And I can't even really even remember what I said, but I remember after the interview, I thought about it that night. I thought about that question, and I was like, I could have said this. You know what I mean? And then the next morning, I'm like, or I could have said that.
Yeah.
And then it was just lodged in there.
Yeah.
I thought about this same question for weeks, and I started really kind of like, what really is the most important thing, And the more I started thinking about it, the more I realized, like, man, somebody could ask me that question 1,000 days in a row, and I can give them a different answer.
Right.
And at the time I was working with a publishing company on a lyric book that was more or less like a poetry book that is kind of just sitting in a box somewhere that never came to be up in the Pacific Northwest. And at the time being, we were kind of at a standstill with that book. And I said, man, I have this idea for another book. And the whole idea was, so all these people that I've worked with and have known for over half of my life have lived and worked, made a living on the road. And they're not just people that you see on the marquee or see their names on T-shirts. I'm talking like hotel managers, truck drivers, bus drivers, the roadies, the stage crew, all these people who their role and their life and everything that they do is just as valid and important as the dude that everybody's buying the T-shirt for or paying the ticket to come and go see. Right? Their job is just as important, right? And they've been doing it just as long, some of them longer, than the guy that they're going to pay to go see, right? So to me, all of those stories are just as important, just as valuable to hear and understand, So all I did was I went around and I asked a bunch of buddies, like, hey, I'm putting this little book together. I'm going to ask you a question and answer the question in 500 to 1,000 words. What's the most valuable life experience you've ever learned while living a life on the road? And all of those people just answered that question. And, but it was really cool. And I learned a lot because to me, and a lot of it was stuff that I already had experienced or I'd known. Some of it was totally off the wall that I wasn't expecting to come back. But a lot of it was stuff that I had realized, maybe years ago and had forgotten, kind of the whole what's obvious isn't always seen. So when I was kind of dealing with a lot of the editing and just kind of fielding all the responses that were coming in, I'm reading these stories and just kind of having these little realizations or these little recharges, that were happening where I'm like, oh yeah, that's something that I need to always recognize.
Yeah.
That maybe I've been neglecting to see.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Can folks get that somewhere other than for $500 on Amazon? Is it still...
I need to repress it, man. I just I don't have the money to do it right now. But
I'd like to read that. Yeah.
One of these days I'll do it.
That's great. Yeah. Man, Chuck, I don't want to take any more of your time. This has been such an honor, man.
I appreciate your time, man.
I grew up in Ocala, so like hot water music was like it's just a part of growing up there, It's just like a thing.
I kind of grew up a little bit in Ocala. My brother and I used to go skate Thrashers all the time.
Oh, wow, yeah.
We lived in Sarasota.
Yeah.
And we used to sneak up there and get in our buddy Doc's car and, ride up there with when my parents had no idea where we were going.
Yeah.
And we'd go just wreck ourselves. And when we got a little bit older, our parents used to drive us up there.
That's cool.
Skate, and
That's fun,
it
man.
was a good place. And then I lived in Micanopy for a while. And,
Yeah. Oh, so
it
beautiful.
was- yeah.
So beautiful up
The
there.
street family. Yeah.
That's great. Well, man, thank you so much.
Hey,
Chuck.
it's my pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All the best.
Took a walk in Rotterdam, thinking about a train all along the banks of memory, holding tight away, and on the end of every corner, could almost hear her sound. Time went by in ecstasy, walking next to walls, and the color of the water was the rails that she was on, and when the whistles blew far away, I felt she
Chuck
was
Ragan, y'all. Thank you, Chuck. It was an honor to talk with you. The two songs of Chuck's that we used in this episode are Gathering Wood from The Flame and the Flood and Rotterdam from 2009's Gold Country. Thank you all so much for listening. A special thank you to our Patreon patrons. Y'all are amazing. If you can swing it and you're not already a Patreon patron, come join the ranks. For a modest contribution per month, you can help keep the Marinade a viable endeavor. Our patrons get an exclusive podcast, swag, and other content, as well as opportunities to ask questions of our guests. So go on to patreon.com and search the Marinade. Also, give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and send us messages. We love it. Rate us wherever you consume podcasts, please. It makes a big difference for us, and it's free. All right, now to what I'm getting down on. I am obsessed with Erica Winterstrom's Sweet Unknown. Erica is the lead singer of the outstanding band Heartless Bastards, whose records I've been a fan of for years. Erica's solo record came out earlier this year, and it is a gorgeous, hope-filled masterpiece. A challenger for Album of the Year in my mind, so get down on it. Sweet Unknown by Erica Winterstrom. Season 2 of Amazon's outstanding TV series Patriot came out earlier this month. Patriot is dark and hilarious and beautifully written, gorgeously shot, expertly acted, so well worth your time. It's about a reluctant government agent who really just wants to be a folk singer, and I can't recommend it enough. And I'm currently reading David Halberstam's The Best and the Brightest, one of those books I've been meaning to pick up for years. It's an account of the Kennedy administration's decision to get the U.S. heavily involved in the Vietnam War. It's a fair but critical account of that horrendous blunder, and I think it's important to revisit those events, especially considering the current political landscape and the decisions of our current administration. Thank you all so much for listening. Until next time, cheers, y'all.